October 9th, 2019. Let's go ahead and start with the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes for the September 25th, 2019 meeting. Is everybody here? Almost there. Okay. Is there any discussion or comment on the minutes?
I move to approve.
Motion by Weston.
I'll second.
A second by Brenda. Let's go down. We'll start with Darren,
Aye.
Brenda,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Sarah,
Abstain.
Weston,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Agree.
Maureen,
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Now we've got the report of the chair and the vice chair. I have nothing to report.
Vice Chair has nothing to report.
Okay, and we'll get a report of the director.
No report.
A report.
Other than, can you please make sure when you respond to Marlene about meetings, whether or not you are attending, please don't say, yes, I'm attending. Say, yes, I am attending the field trip and the meeting, or I'm only attending the meeting. Or no, I'm attending neither. Those are the only three acceptable answers. And please do not use the city council office door to exit this room at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the public hearings listed in the agenda as a housekeeping matter. There are cards. If you wish to speak on an item that's on the agenda, please complete one of the cards and pass it to the front here, and I'll hold those, and when we get to the agenda item, I'll call your name. You don't have to, but it just helps facilitate the public hearing portion. And then you will have 2 minutes to speak during that time. All right. First item on the agenda is the Edison House conditional use at 335 South, 200 West. And you are not Wayne.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not Wayne.
Oh, sorry,
I'm
Ashley.
Ashley.
There you are. I was like, wait a minute.
Because Wayne's supposed to be here. All right. So, yeah, my name is Ashley Scarf. I have this evening a request. The applicant's, the legal entity is Bubba Holdings LLC. They're the applicant. They're requesting to construct a 3-story structure at 335 South, 200 West that would house a membership-based social club named Edison House. This project is in front of the commission tonight for a 2-part conditional use review. For the first one, the purpose statement and regulations of the D3 Downtown Warehouse Residential Zoning District strongly encourage mixed-use projects that include multifamily residential. So basically, I'll get into this later, but that's the first part of the conditional use review, and the second part is because the proposal contains indoor and outdoor bar establishments, which are conditional uses in the D3 zone as well. So those are the two things we'll be looking at. So for this project, the code doesn't recognize a social club type use, so staff broke down every individual use proposed for the structure, and they're on this table, which is in the staff report. But you'll see that the project includes a restaurant, event space with kitchen prep areas, a small performance stage, workout gym, and administrative office areas. And then the conditional uses highlighted in red are those alcohol-related uses and their accessory uses. So there's a bar lounge that would be paired with a small performance stage, a separate sports bar with a lounge area, and a rooftop bar area that would also contain a small pool and hot tub. And I'll let the applicant speak to the proposed operations in their presentation, but it's important to note that none of the club would be open to the general public. You would need to be the member or the guest of a member. They do have plans for a lot of programming for the spaces with things like panel speakers, live music, comedy shows, private events, and cooking classes are some of the examples they named. The narrative contains the operating hours for some of the individual uses, but the club as a whole would generally be open from 6:30 a.m. to midnight on weeknights and 6:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. on the weekends. And staff is recommending a condition of approval that would require the rooftop amenities to close by 10 p.m. on weeknights and by midnight on Friday and Saturday. So this is an aerial photo that shows some of the surrounding land uses. The site has frontage on 200 West. The property is entirely surrounded by property owned by the Broadway Lofts condominiums. So the actual condo structure is about 110 feet to the east, but the condo's parking structure surrounds the subject site on 3 sides. Further north is a vacant corner lot. Further south is a surface parking lot that serves a hotel that has frontage on 400 South. And across the street to the west is the Palladio apartment complex. And there is a larger map in the staff report, but this section of 300 South has multiple restaurants and bars. Squatters, Gracie's, P.F. Chang's, Vultures is right there. And here's just a view of the site from 200 West is the street shown in the bottom right corner. In that 5-story structure is the Broadway Lofts condominium, and then you can see the parking structure that kind of surrounds that vacant area on 3 sides. So this slide shows the proposed site plan. The structure will be built to the property lines on all 4 sides, leaving no setback areas. On the sides, you can see the entrance and exit ramps to the condo parking structure. And the garage itself would be against the rear facade of the new building. So at the top, to the, I guess, top of the property would be that's where that parking garage is. No parking is proposed on site for this project, but the applicant has indicated they plan to satisfy those requirements through either an off-site lease agreement or a valet agreement, but 18 spaces are required by code. So here's the front elevation of the structure, which would face 200 West. The building's proposed to be 55 feet in height at its tallest point, which is well below the maximum which is permitted by right in the D3 zone, which is 75 feet. Primary building materials include brick, there's exposed steel framing and significant glazing. And aluminum paneling is also proposed in certain areas, which the planning director would need to approve as a durable material during the building permit review process. So that's part of those design guidelines for this zone, have to have a certain percentage of durable materials. So the planning director would have to approve that in the future, or they'd have to use another type of durable material. I included the rendering because the straight-on elevations are a little hard to read, but you can see in the perspective there are a lot of modulations in the building walls. It's kind of interesting, so on the ground level and the 3rd level, there are 2 pretty large terraces, but the design kind of uses the building facade as a screening element of those kind of balcony areas. And there are aluminum, I think they're called like louvers, kind of a screening that could be opened and closed to change the light or the privacy as well. So I'm just going to go through some of the elevations and floor plans really quick. This is the rear of the structure, and it's largely brick. The rest of the facades are largely brick because there are no setbacks, and a lot of the surrounding areas are vacant or underdeveloped sites that probably will be developed in the future also with 0 setbacks. So there's building code restrictions on the amount of openings that can be in the building walls. This is the north elevation, which is almost entirely brick. The south elevation is largely brick. There is the 3rd floor, that's part of that rooftop pool and bar area. And just very quickly, the 1st floor has the restaurant and some gym amenities. The 2nd floor has the performance stage with bar and lounge area to the left, sports bar with a lounge area. There's a karaoke room, administrative office areas, and more workout amenities. And then the 3rd floor is actually only partially contained. There is the event space with prep kitchen, which is inside the structure, but beyond that, it's an open terrace. And then on the right side, you'll see that rooftop bar and the rooftop swimming pool and hot tub. So this isn't on top of it's worth noting, the pool isn't on top of the 3rd floor. It is within the third floor. So it's technically on top of the second floor. And then these next few slides just touch on the 2 conditional use reviews. So as I mentioned earlier, the D3 zone strongly encourages mixed-use projects that contain multifamily residential. The italicized language is the language from the code that this project is subject to. But basically, commercial uses in buildings of 3 stories or more without multifamily dwellings shall only be allowed as a conditional use, and then only when the applicant has demonstrated that the proposed location is not suitable for multifamily residential. So the applicant has cited multiple reasons why the site's not conducive to multifamily. Includes there's a small site area, limitations from building code requirements for windows and other openings, and the required separation from other structures. Higher parking ratios for multifamily uses, and lenders' unwillingness to fund a project that doesn't have a high ratio of parking contained on site. And they did provide this graphic, which is in the submitted materials as well. It just kind of illustrates how the building footprint is affected with different levels of windows and glazing that would be required with multifamily. And then the second conditional use is for the alcohol-related uses. The conditional use standards specific to alcohol-related uses are largely meant to ensure that the applicant provides the security and operations plan. It gives the police an opportunity to review the plans as well as the building official. And a draft security and operations plan is in the staff report. It hasn't been approved by the police yet, but we have recommended these things as conditions of approval, which is pretty standard for conditional uses for bars. And just really quickly, staff did find that the proposal supports and advances elements of both the downtown master plan and Plan Salt Lake. And to summarize, Plan Salt Lake calls for the promotion of the city as a regional entertainment, artistic, and cultural center and destination with diverse types of facilities. And the downtown master plan calls for these types of uses to be concentrated within the Broadway district and specifically identifies this subject site as an area of opportunity. This project would also provide additional facilities for entertainment and cultural experiences through the planned programming of the spaces that I mentioned earlier. Staff has heard multiple concerns from 3 tenants of the Broadway Lofts condos, which is the structure that is about 110 feet to the east of the site. The primary concern seems to be the potential noise produced from the open-air bar in the swimming pool area on the 3rd level. Staff does find the noise-related concerns to be valid and is recommending a condition of approval that would require the rooftop amenities to close by 10 p.m. on weeknights and by midnight on the weekends. And while the downtown master plan describes the Broadway district as the city's hub for entertainment, cultural and nightlife venues, and it does mention street activity continuing late into the night, regulations of the D3 zone do strongly encourage multifamily residential, and I think that should be acknowledged so both uses can coexist harmoniously, hopefully. So here's the rendering of that rooftop area, and you can see that the bar area is largely enclosed. There's brick walls on the 2 sides. The back wall does have gaps on either side, but there's that metal paneling, and then there's kind of a terrace-like overhead structure. You can see some of the exposed steel framing around the rest of the pool area, and then there would be a short glass railing around the entire perimeter of this area. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approves both conditional use requests this evening, subject to the conditions of approval, which were included in the staff report. That's it.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions for Ashley at this point?
Yeah. You said that one of the materials was not considered durable. That was the glazing itself, or did I mishear that?
No, sorry. So that it's an aluminum metal paneling.
Aluminum panel.
Sorry.
Okay.
You can kind of see it in the rendering, but it's largely proposed on the ground floor of this west facade. Our code just doesn't specifically call that a durable material, but the planning director has the authority to approve that. So we'll get more information on that material when they're applying for a building permit.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to come forward?
We might need one more chair, though. Can we unplug this?
That's all right. Here can come up.
Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Carden. This is my son, George Carden, and my other son, Charlie Carden.
Wow.
So I'll get started while Amir downloads this. So we appreciate the city meeting with us, and especially Ashley, thanks so much for helping us guide us through this whole process. She's been super helpful.
Isn't technology fun?
Best laid plans. Here we go. Okay. There we go. That didn't come up?
Yeah, is there another UPS on this side of the piers? Yeah, there you go. That's right. Leave it in a sec.
Can you get started without the presentation, or?
I think we can do that.
Why don't we start? I'll just start, okay? Just because I
that'd
know
be great.
the time's sensitive and important. So just to introduce myself, I'm Jeff Carden. I was born and raised in Utah, and I was an executive, a CEO of a company for 37 years. It's based here in Salt Lake, a large growing company. So we have deep roots here in Salt Lake. I'm sixth generation Utah, which I think makes George and Charlie's seventh generation. So we think that the Edison House is part of our commitment to the community. We started this project about a year and a half ago. It took us a year to find this. And what the Edison House, it's a reimagined social club. So it's not, if you think about a bar or your other idea of what a social club might be, this is something that's very different. There we go. And we think to the neighbors that are here, we appreciate the neighbors that are here tonight to hear our story. We think we have a compelling story. This product, as I think you'll see from the architectural designs, this is a very innovative and beautiful building that's going to come into the neighborhood that are going to enhance, I think, the cultural reputation of the neighborhood. So we would hope that the neighbors would see that this is going to add significant value, not only to the city, but to the neighborhood. And we, given our roots here and the fact that we're going to be on site managing the project, that we're going to be great neighbors. That's how that's what our goal is, and we've already met with some of the neighbors. So the ones that have met with us, I think, would hopefully echo that sentiment. So I'm going to turn the time over to George. That was hopefully less than 2 minutes, and let him tell you a little bit more about what we're doing.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here speaking with you today. As Jeff alluded to, it's been a long time coming for us. And I'd like to start by just sharing a little bit about why we wanted to open this business. Everyone here has been in a situation, I believe, where maybe you're out with friends or family, and maybe you're at dinner, and you look around, and everyone in the group is staring at their phones. And while this may not seem like the biggest deal in and of itself, it is symptomatic of something larger that's taking place in society. Several studies have been done that actually show that loneliness and disconnectedness are on the rise. People are feeling more isolated than ever before. And these same studies actually show that the erosion of community is a major factor in that. And so we believe that Edison House and other modern social clubs like it have an important role to play in solving and addressing this issue. by rebuilding communities and reconnecting people. And this has actually started to happen in several other cities. It's a bit of a movement. You can find these establishments cropping up in towns with tens of thousands of people and in big cities like New York and London. And so we wanted to see this movement for ourselves. As part of our research process, Jeff and Charlie and I, we traveled to California and Washington and Virginia. We met with the owners of these clubs. We met with the H Club in Los Angeles. We met with the owner of the Battery in San Francisco, and we spent a day with the founder of the Collective in Seattle. We've connected with the CEO of Common House in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then there's Soho House, where there's 20 plus establishments around the world. And what all of these places have in common is that they've identified this trend, this need for community. They've recognized that curated communities are important, especially in urban settings. And we believe that Salt Lake is in the same boat. We believe that Salt Lake would be a great place for a club like this to thrive. In addition to the community aspect, these clubs serve a really important entertainment and cultural purpose in their respective cities. And we would hope that and plan that Edison House could serve that same role for Salt Lake City. In Salt Lake's master plan, as Ashley alluded to, the stated goal, or one of the stated goals for downtown and the Broadway district in particular, is to establish it as an entertainment and culture hub. And we think that Salt Lake, or that Edison House, can lend a really compelling and unique voice to that conversation. Part of our plan is to hold a broad range of unique programming events that you can't find in Salt Lake. We might bring in a celebrity chef to do cooking classes with our members, or find a national expert on the anecdotal history of rock and roll. Or perhaps we go out and find some up-and-coming musical talent to give an acoustic show with a Q&A in our speakeasy. This kind of interactive, experience-based nightlife is something that's actually in short supply in Salt Lake, and we found that through research. As part of our process, we interviewed a lot of prospective members, hundreds, and they responded that with 80% of them said that Salt Lake does not offer enough unique, interactive, experience-based nightlife. So this is a gap here in Salt Lake. And in the same survey, they demonstrated that this is something that they really want. There's a big demand for it. And we think Edison House can provide that. Lastly, I'd like to just talk about why we think Edison House can be a really valuable asset to the city as it undertakes the explosive growth that's happening here. We've all seen the apartment complexes that are going up on every corner, and it seems that every time I go out to dinner, it's like an hour-long wait just to get into a restaurant. And so obviously the city has a need to make sure that it's providing sufficient resources for nightlife and dining and entertainment. But we think Edison House can actually offer something more, something unique that maybe others can't. I've talked to a lot of transplants, people who've moved to Salt Lake, and they've shared with me the difficulty that they've had adjusting to the city life here. A really popular thing you may have even heard from a lot of the companies who are here is that Salt Lake is one of the most requested cities for people to come here. And that's something we should be celebrating. But what they may not be telling you is that, sadly, it's also one of the most requested cities to leave. And the reason is that it's a difficult place to meet people. The community here is a bit hard to break into, and we really think that Edison House can assist with that. And now I'd like to just say, on a personal note, I grew up here in Salt Lake, and I used to go to every Jazz game, like every single one. And to see the downtown thriving is something that really matters to me. And I want the growth that happens in Salt Lake to happen here. Not down south in Lehigh or in Silicon Slopes, but downtown. It matters to me. And that's also something that matters to the business community. It's a message that resonates with business leaders. We've met with many of them, and they've shared with us how difficult it can be to bring in employees of top talent because they're nervous to move here for all the reasons that I've kind of outlined. And so we believe that Edison House can be a really valuable asset that differentiates Salt Lake City, and it would be a differentiating factor. Denver does not have a social club like this. Many of the other cities don't. And so in summary, we just think this would be a great way for Salt Lake to demonstrate to anyone looking that we're a forward-moving city, and we think it would benefit the local community, the incoming community, and the business community. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my brother Charlie so that he can share a bit about the operating side of our business, and he's also our CFO.
Hey, everyone.
Okay. We have just a few more minutes.
Okay.
I'll be really
We'll go
concise.
fast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to talk about our responsibility as operators, and specifically as it relates to noise and security, which I know has raised some concerns. The first thing I want to emphasize that us as a business take really seriously is that this is not a bar culture. So this is not Gracie's. Like Jeff said earlier in the presentation, this is a place for professionals to go and socialize. We think that's a really important point because the expectations for noise are very different between these two different cultures. Another important piece of this is that it's a membership model. So what that means is we can control who comes in and out of our doors. And so if any of our members are disruptive to the neighborhood, and while we don't think this is going to happen, we actually have the ability to revoke their membership, and they won't be coming to Edison House anymore. And the last thing we just want to show is that we've thought about the noise and security issues from the very beginning, and this will be showcased in our design, our architecture design that Amir is going to talk about in a second. And also we've gone and met with the HOA of our nearest neighbors, which is the Broadway Lofts, and we've communicated to them that we want to have open lines of communication. We'll meet with them monthly, weekly, whatever they want in order for us to, talk about any issues or anything with the business. I think there's other way. Yeah, there we go. And then here are the hours of operation. As you know, our business is comprised of multiple different business units. This actually shows, just want to note that this shows the rooftop access hours that was recommended by Ashley and her team. So it's really important to us that, so I moved here from Chicago, and it's really important to us to have the rooftop. In Chicago, it's such a part of downtown urban living to be on a rooftop, you're outdoors, it's beautiful. And so being open until midnight on the weekends are really important to us. But we also recognize that we have neighbors, and so we think that the compromise of being open till 10 on the weekdays and midnight on the weekends is a great place for everyone. Good. And the last piece that I'm going to talk about is parking. I know this is on top of everyone's mind for downtown Salt Lake. We will fulfill our parking requirements through a parking lease. We found a lot of parking lots within the 1,000 feet that are near us that are not fully occupied. We have met with a lot of the operators of these parking facilities. Since we're so far out, we haven't penciled anything, but they have shown a lot of interest in partnering with us. And another thing we learned during our due diligence is that of all the clubs we went to and met with in other cities, none of them have dedicated parking. But also we will for code purposes, but also that roughly 5% of the membership will be in the club at any time. So if we open with 500 people, which is our goal, that'll be 25 people. So Amir, go ahead and talk about building design.
Okay. I know we only
1
have
minute?
I'm speeding through, yeah. I'm
1
sorry if
minute
that
or
was
less.
very fast.
Sorry.
I don't want to
60 seconds. All right. Ashley did a great job really summarizing the design and compliance. There's a few things we'd like to point out. Amir Tursik with HKS Architects, by the way. These exhibits simply demonstrate what Ashley has already outlined, why this lot would be very challenging for residential use. I'm not sure that we need to rehash that. We're also using the full lot, as she alluded to. We're also removing the overhead power lines and burying them, which is something that the downtown plan encourages. We have already had conversations with the transportation department to convert some of the metered parking to short-term parking for deliveries, so that we're not stopping parking. On the planning side, I'd just like to add that we added a basement for mechanical and electrical spaces, as well as for collection of recyclable storage, so that we can really maximize the active uses on the ground level, because that's one of the things that it's in the D3 district as well as in the downtown plan. That's very important. Same happens on level 2. One thing that I like to point out is that we're planning on having completely operable walls that again allow to further activate the streets during the day, but then later at night they can be closed and mitigate the noise. You've already seen the roof terrace plans. I'd just like to point out that this is a completely solid wall, and that the entire terrace is actually enclosed by the mass. That would basically mitigate majority of noise going to the east. The active uses would be complemented with a high amount of glazing. Brick is another material that we're proposing to use that's very contextual and really echoes of the warehouse district. To your question about the aluminum panels, this is a high quality material that we used on the Eccles Theater in Ballet West. It's not something that's inexpensive or cheap. That would definitely be up to par with other durable materials. You've already seen the other elevations. These are some just of the concept imagery that we wanted to share with you. to really demonstrate the quality that this project will have. The idea of using the brick in a very innovative way, exposed steel screens that allow us to kind of open the facade up and really change it as needed, and how brick can be used in a very innovative way. These are some of the examples that we see being appropriate for that north wall, so they won't be completely a solid wall. There's actually opportunities for public art, large graphics, or signage that would be integrated with architecture, so that's what we're seeing on that. But, you know, architecturally speaking, really quick, obviously this is a social club that will break the mold of the social clubs, aka Alta Club. This club will be open to all demographics, of all genders, race, sexual orientation, their professions, and we're kind of trying to embrace that and celebrate it in architecture. And when you look at the front elevation, you start to see this steel frame literally breaking out of the brick box. So we're trying to conceptualize that architecturally, but we're also creating a very permeable facade that will be welcoming and open to everybody, but at the same time maintain level of privacy with the movable screens that again would also allow us to mitigate some of the noise concerns as needed later at night.
Okay.
You've seen the rest of the renderings, so if you have any other questions, we'd love to answer them.
Great, thank you. All right, questions?
Hopefully, we didn't take too much of your time, but
Thank you.
we hurried.
Questions from the commission? No questions? Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You want
Thanks
me to
for
step back? We will now open in a minute. The public hearing portion. Is there anybody here from the community council who would like to come up to speak? Okay, let's open it then to the general public. Okay, you may approach the microphone, please.
There's three of us who represent the Broadway law, so if you don't mind, we can all gather at the table, if that's okay. What's best for you?
So it's one at a time, and if, I appreciate that, but let's keep it to, each individual will have 2 minutes in which to speak.
All right.
And please make sure to state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Zee Hakamo. I've lived at the Broadway Lofts for 14 years, and I came to Salt Lake at that time. First question is for you, how many of you live within 100 feet of a bar? I know they call it a social club, but I ask you, how many of you live within 100 feet of a bar? I live probably 1,000 feet from a bar, and it's very, very noisy. But that was the right district, and I knew it when I came in. It was 4 bars. The district was right, and we accepted this. But it's a big change to be 1,000 feet and 100 feet. A private social club does not make it a quiet club. Membership makes it even harder to get rid of people who are noisy. I know that. The question is not what's good for the city. What's good for the neighborhood is good for the city. We have to start small. What's good for your family, what's good for your neighborhood, and if all those things work out, what's good for the city. And we're here to represent the neighborhood. Cooking classes sound great. There's no place in Salt Lake around at least my neighborhood where there are cooking classes, and that would be wonderful. And thank you for offering that. But a bar is a bar. I noticed that the bar would be open till 2 a.m. As a resident of Broadway Lofts, I would have noise Monday through Friday till 10 at night and then till 2 a.m., even on Sunday night. I urge each of you to spend 2 nights by a bar and see what happens to you night after night after night after night. It is not pleasant. And believe me, I drink and I love going to a bar, but I don't do it so my neighbors suffer. I have nothing wrong with bars. Another thing is, we all need peace and quiet. We talk about the 4-H club. I was a member of the 4-H club. I was a Girl Scout. Please don't compare a bar, a social club, to a 4-H club. I'm very sorry. I take great offense to be compared as a 4-H member when I was a teenager. to this.
Okay, that was your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Now, you did give a little extra time to the others. I would hope that you give a little extra time for us as well.
thank you very much.
My name is Ruck Adams. I'm a resident at Broadway Lofts. I'm also on the board of the HOA, the association, but here is to represent myself. I think the use is wonderful for the city, but like most of my neighbors, very concerned about the hours of a bar. I know noise ordinances can be enforced, except what we've found with the other bars in the neighborhood, noise ordinances don't get enforced. And if the rooftop is closed at 10 and someone wants to go outside, then they're outside on our ramps, and then they're socializing to be outside, and then they're back inside to get another drink. Very concerned about midnight, and that becomes 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on the weekends, and 10 o'clock during the week, when the noise ordinance says that quiet is supposed to come quieter at 9 p.m. So I would urge the council to consider, the Planning Commission to consider those hours being restricted to further be considerate of the people that live there, that moved into an area that was not supposed to have a bar and social club in front of it, but rather residential space, which would have been far fewer people. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is German Lincoln. I've been in Broadway Lofts building for 15 years. I currently hold the position of the HOA board president. Fortunately, we couldn't get a lot of the residents here due to the conflict of the time today, but we have a lot of feedback that we were gathering. We were talking to Ashley, and I will try to get straight to the technical part of it. You heard some of the emotional, sentimental concerns, but we've been studying the building codes, the Salt Lake City building codes, and the zoning and district restrictions. There are certain aspects that were not raised today in terms of there are certain, let me get to that page, the standards for conditional uses in the D3 district that were not raised. The hours of operation and delivery should be compatible with surrounding use. And in our case, surrounding use is a couple of residential buildings, not the Walters, not some of the bars, establishments that are in the D1 zone. Speaking of Gracie, speaking of Squatters, speaking of Club Ibiza, they all reside in D1. We're in D3. So we are searching for all those provisions and building codes that were not discussed today by Ashley, even though we sent her numerous letters and she said it's going to be included. It's a big concern for us. We want the commission at least to consider formally limit some hours of operation for the rooftop bar at least, because we find that midnight open rooftop bar that is going to be situated about 110 feet from our windows is going to, regardless of how you try to contain the noise and monitor the people and the use of a rooftop, if the alcohol is involved and there is 10 plus people on the rooftop, it's going to violate the city noise ordinance, and that is going to become a bigger issue like we have with squatters, where the health department or police are not a big help for us. So we're left to dealing with squatters on our own. They're in D1, they're slightly different, but the city noise ordinance still applies. So our biggest concern, if this gets approved and the hours are not changed, that's going to cause a lot of issues going forward for the residents and for the business owners as well, because they're going to be on the other side of it. So we're still asking you to look further into that. We obviously, as you heard, we support the project. We like the concept of it and adding it to the city, but the problem is the proximity of it to our residential community and also the Palladio apartment across the street. And you're probably aware there is a proposed apartment complex project on the south side of our parking lot, which may see the green light as well, so that will add issues in terms of the noise later on.
Great.
So
Thank you very much. Is
thank you.
there anybody else here who would wish to speak? Please come forward.
Rowan Stigner, Broadway Lofts. I've been there for about 8 years or thereabouts. I'm also a transplant. By the way, Ashley, thank you for all your help regarding the the email conversations we had. Also transplant, so I do recognize the idea that sometimes Salt Lake can be a bit of a lonely place when you're from out of town. So I recognize the value in this project. However, I am concerned about the outdoor bar, as everyone's worried about. It's just noise levels. What I'd like to find out if there's a way, the noise ordinance says 50 decibels at property line after 9 p.m. So I'd like to find out what the recourse is in the event that those decibel levels are exceeded. For an outdoor bar, I would guess they would be, but you know, like I said, I think the project idea is a great idea. I like it. I just want to make sure that I can still sleep. I got a 6-year-old kid back there. We go to bed about 9. You know, so yeah. So it'd be nice to be able to know that there's no recourse, and I can still sleep and get up, take my kids to school. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I actually live downtown. I've been downtown for about 5.5 years.
Please state your
Excuse
name
me,
for the
can you
record.
state-
Sorry, Holly Strasberg.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm here in support of the project. I live downtown. I can favor that it's an hour and a half wait to eat at any restaurant or bar downtown today. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather. And with all the additional condo and residences going around the city, I think it's going to be a bigger concern. So as a resident of downtown, I am supportive of the project and think it'd be good for the culture and the nightlife and the downtown vibe that I think we're all trying to get when we live in a city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kelly Karst. I actually work at the Fairfield that's just kitty corner. I'm the hotel partner. I want to speak on behalf because we do host a wild spectrum of all walks of life. An ongoing issue that we do have is with the Ibiza Club. And I mean, I'm happy to urge you guys, if you would love to spend some time next to a club, we're right next door to the Ibiza. We've had ongoing issues with the noise complaints, so we are concerned about the rooftop bar. Also, our concern is parking, because I feel like in that little vicinity of area, we are the only ones with parking. There's the Palladio Apartments, there's the Residence Inn that share parking. The Broadway Lofts actually come to us frequently. A good portion of our parking lot is actually designated to the Broadway Lofts. So going outside of that, like, where's our parking for our guests? We also want to know, because if they are like border to border, where are they putting their trash receptacles? Where are their shipments going? Is that going to encroach onto our property line? Like, we do have 2 entrances into our parking lot, but then I know a lot of the time with the Broadway Lofts, like, we're sharing a parking lot with their shipments, their recycling, their garbage bins. So it's just an ongoing issue. I'm totally on board. I love the idea of having a gym and a bar or a gym and a restaurant, something close by, but also just a few concerns for our guests. I mean, that's our bread and butter. Like, that's the purpose of why we're there. So we have to look out for them first. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Does your hotel have a bar or a restaurant?
We just serve breakfast. We don't have a bar or restaurant.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak?
My name is Jonathan Sherwood. I moved here from Los Angeles 13 months ago. When I was thinking about coming to Salt Lake, it was great on paper. I was sold. I'd be skiing in 30 minutes, outdoors, great people, friendly environment. And then I came here, and I got to tell you, it's been one of the most difficult places to meet people, connect with people. I'm 30 years old, a professional. I felt like in LA, I would go to guest speakers at the Getty, all kinds of things on a regular basis. And then I came here, and it's been so difficult. So I would strongly encourage you to approve this. I would love to join as a member. I could even see corporations sponsoring their employees to become members of this, because that sort of young networking business environment is really lacking in Salt Lake. And this seems like it would be a gym that you could put on your promotional materials and try to recruit more talent like me to come here and help grow the economy. So I encourage you to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will then close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have discussion now? Do we want to bring Ashley back?
I have a question for Ashley.
Okay, Ashley.
Ashley, one of my struggles with conditional uses is that by law, if it is a conditional use, the Planning Commission's role is to determine a detrimental use and if there is a reasonable solution. I appreciate some of the comments from the community that offered the solution. Oftentimes, we don't hear that. We hear problems, and then I'm left to decide what's reasonable, which is very arbitrary. So I have a couple follow-ups regarding some of those solutions that were mentioned during the public comments. One of them also is a question. So one of the questions, or one of the comments about the detrimental use and a solution would be to look at the surrounding zones, or the surrounding uses. Does the city, or you, the planning office, have a parameter, or do you solely look at D1 versus D3, or are you looking at a feet parameter when you look at that standard for reason or surrounding uses?
I don't believe in the conditional use standards language there is any specific direction on that. We do not separate it out by use. By zone, by zoning district. So in my analysis, I did not ignore everything in the D1 zone and only consider things in the D3 because it's not in my presentation, but in the staff report, I do have a zoning map, and it is,
yes,
the boundary is nearby.
No, you did, and sometimes the project is basically at the edge of a boundary, but that doesn't necessarily always equate to a surrounding use. So you look at the surrounding uses regardless of the zone, but what's going on nearby within a reasonable distance of what could affect different uses, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then my follow-up question, since the what seems to be identified by the community comments, by the public comments, is the roof, solely looking at the rooftop noise. That seems to be what the residents have really honed in on. And I realize that in the application that has changed to reflect the same hours that you've recommended. I guess I'm curious as to the difference, because I actually live not far from a dance club, and so we've had many of these similar issues of the combination of alcohol and noise, and they close and the noise doesn't really stop, et cetera. So I'm curious as to the difference between the surrounding uses, noise, the ordinance, and how those businesses, when they close and they're later than the noise ordinance, like how does the city approach that that imbalance, I guess?
When it comes to the noise ordinance?
When it comes to when an establishment that you know is going to be generating noise closes well after the city's posted time that we go into more of a quiet time. So for weekends, 11, weeknights is 9 p.m. So how does the city approach that when there's a difference between operating hours for an establishment that is most likely going to be causing noise after those hours? Is this something that you look at when you're evaluating projects?
It's not something I don't believe that we look at when evaluating projects. We evaluate them against the noise ordinance, which the noise, I guess, enforcement is largely handled by Salt Lake County Health Department. So I believe their website says if it's like a special event or a unique situation that's making noise that was permitted by the city, to contact the city, but most of the time you would go to the county for that.
Well, so from my personal understanding, the county establishes most of those decibels. So they don't, you can't call them at midnight. No one's there, no one's going to answer. But they come out and they will do tests based on if you're saying this is louder than the decibel, I think this is louder. They will come out and make that evaluation.
Yeah.
But I looked on the Be a Good Neighbor listing on Salt Lake City website just to double check what the times were. And the Be a Good Neighbor guide that Salt Lake City issues states 9 p.m. for weeknights, and Friday and Saturday is 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And so the enforcement for that would be Salt Lake City Police. The county health will come out and tell you if they're too loud decibel-wise.
Yeah.
But they won't do any type of enforcement based on hours, because that's what the city is establishing. So I'm just to kind of follow up on the incongruence of when that time is stated for city noise, and yet we have these establishments that are operating well after that.
Yeah. I mean, I know that when we're evaluating projects, I mean, the alcohol-related uses, so bars, there is a specific requirement about sound, but it basically just says that, you know, the use would have to comply with the noise ordinance.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ashley?
Just to clarify, if we put a condition on this that ties the hours to this building, if the use changes and it changes hands, those hours continue to be tied to that building, is that correct?
The use wouldn't be able to change without an amendment. If this was approved this evening, the use could not be changed without an amendment of this conditional use. So they would have to come back and request to change
So
that.
it has to stay a social club with these kind of amenities?
Yeah, so the social club, this project, if it was approved tonight, it would be held to what is shown in these plans, the conditions of approval that you choose to apply. I guess I should correct myself. If it changed ownership and someone wanted to change the use to a permitted use in the zone, you could do that. If it was another conditional use, or if they wanted to tweak the social club specifics, they would have to come back to amend that.
If it changed to a permitted use, do the hours then revert, they can have whatever hours they want? Or do they, if that's a condition of building this building, those hours are tied to this building?
The hours are tied to this project, this social club project.
Just this project?
Thank you.
How is that enforced? So how does the city ensure the residents that the hours that we approve tonight actually that's actually how it's operated?
I think the biggest thing is that, and that's why even after the applicants amended their proposed hours to match what I was recommending, we would still keep that language as a condition of approval. Then it's in writing. It can be referenced with the approval in case the situation ever arose, like an issue with noise complaints or something. That could be used kind of as leverage to enforce, as well as the security and operations plan. That has to be recorded with the city recorder.
It would have to be residents filing a complaint, and then code enforcement would force.
And conditional uses can be revoked by the city.
Oh.
Yeah, it could be
if
revoked.
they
So they'd
violate
have a
the
building they
terms.
couldn't use. And is that the same with the parking, like the off-street agreement for off-site parking? Would that be the same condition?
So you mean the...
Given that they don't know exactly who they're going to partner with for the parking, assuming that doesn't happen, then where does that leave the city with parking requirements?
They have to satisfy the parking requirement.
Or they cannot
when they're
operate.
going through the building permit process, yeah. If they can't satisfy the parking, the project wouldn't get permitted.
I see.
Yeah, and if they do get like an off-site lease agreement, building services requires like proof and documentation of that lease.
One last question. So architecturally, we discussed about the materials a little bit. I have two comments on that. One, I think the aluminum, there's a wide range of different aluminum panels. What they've proposed in the report seems to be what I would consider a durable material. The second question is they've suggested, so architecturally, the biggest concern I have is the blank walls, and I understand why that has to happen on the property line. They've discussed along the north side having a mural or using the brick in a public art way. Is that something that can also be required, and what would the process for that be? How do we get an agreement from the developer that actually happens? Because I think that's pretty important, and I think that's actually a really great suggestion that they've made.
We make it a condition of approval.
Make it a condition of approval that
They
some type of art
that they
gets placed on that
incorporate
wall.
a mural or other artistic element on that.
Is that?
I want to ask Paul. I don't know if it would have to be directly related to a standard.
We would support that, by the way.
Thank you.
Apparently, they would support that. There has to be a nexus between this application, this project, and what it is that we would be asking them in terms of art. So something in the conditional use permit application, what they're proposing, that would trigger a need for art. I'm not saying you can. I'm just saying that that's what you would need to identify.
Okay. Any other questions for Ashley?
I have a quick question for the applicant. If you guys want to come back up.
Will you guys come back, please?
If I missed this, and I apologize for stepping in a touch late, what happens to the bar in the winter?
It's outdoor, it'd probably
The
be
rooftop,
closed.
it's largely closed, probably. Certainly would receive quite a bit less use.
And if you remember the architecture, that there's a large event space there, but that's enclosed. So there will be activity in there.
Do people serve drinks in the event space instead of?
Sure, yeah, in the interior, yeah. And as a reminder,
The pool is
rooftop-
closed and.
Yeah, the pool would be
Right,
closed. And that outdoor terrace, a large percentage of it, especially not where the pool is, there's a fair amount of enclosed space. It is open air, but it's architecturally designed intentionally to try and contain the noise.
And the pool is 3 feet deep, I think. So it's, I hate to use the word, but it's like a water feature more than it is a swimming pool.
The whole pool is only 3 feet deep?
It may be like 4. The intention is more to
The intention
socialize
is to
around
be
it.
a place for people to congregate and socialize, not as a
People like to be around
jumping in the
pools. They
water
don't
or
always
whatever.
like to be in
right.
them, though.
So
Sure,
it's,
So do you envision people in the pool?
Yes.
maybe, yeah.
Would you
yeah.
serve me a drink if I was sitting in the pool?
Yes.
If the law would permit it.
Yeah.
Can't take a drink now into the
Correct.
pool.
I think one point too that we would make is that the performance area, where if there was live music, is inside on the second floor. Just if you have visions of some sort of a band up there, that's not what we're talking about.
So do you think that if you closed down the roof earlier, that people would go downstairs to the other bar to continue drinking? Is that one of the ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we really, hopefully you can embrace the idea that this is a social club for professionals to congregate and make connections, not a big party place. And I know that maybe the neighbors don't believe it, but that's what we're attempting to do. But like Charlie said, the outdoor area in other major cities, these urban areas have outdoor rooftop spaces that are just part of that.
Well, if it were not a party area,
Right.
then would there be any need for, extensively amplified music? So it's
No.
blasting around?
No, of course
Could
not.
you agree to limit the amplification of
Oh,
music
we
there
intend
on the
yeah.
roof?
I know there's a lot of concern about that, but we intend to abide by the zoning, and there's decibel levels. And we've met with the Broadway Lofts, and we've communicated to them that if they have issues, like, let's meet every week, we want to hear what you have to say. We don't want to, the gentleman who said he has a daughter, we want to be good neighbors, and so we'll definitely be sensitive to that.
I have a question about smoking.
About smoking?
Smoking.
Right.
Are you going to allow that on the rooftop?
We want to allow smoking on our property.
Okay, that's great. That's a big issue. And then one of the things that for the dance club by me, because of the noise, dance club's not for professionals, but I mean, I consider myself a professional and I can be kind of loud when I want to. But they've employed somebody who, I guess they could call it a security guard, but basically their role is to, after hours, kind of shuffle the people, like, don't congregate by these cars and keep talking, like, move along. They also do litter control, et cetera. Is that something you would consider? I wouldn't make it a condition of your approval, but it might be something that you and the neighbors could agree on if there is a problem.
It's something we plan for anyways.
Yeah, there's no question. I think the way that we think about this, and if you look at the architectural designs, we spent obviously a lot of money just getting to this place. And, we told Amir, like, we want to be sensitive to the noise issues. And so if there's complaints from the neighbors, as good managers, I think that you're compelled to do that to make sure that you comply. And so the way you do that is through management. I mean, I've run a large business, and you train your employees to do that, to make sure that we are in compliance and that we're good neighbors. So for sure, yes.
The short yes.
Yeah, right.
How many people do you envision at that open air bar? And are they kind of like filling out through the rest of the space and kind of coming all the way down the hallway, or are they largely confined to that bar spot?
Well, we definitely plan to have some seating around the pool. It's a social area. We would like to have some tables there and some spaces for the bar. And, we have other uses for the rooftop as well. We've talked about doing rooftop movies with headphones on the far end of the terrace. So there are some uses for that complement the private event hall as well, so that it's kind of a free-flowing space. I don't know that I have a hard answer for how many people do we envision. The reality is this is a new business for us.
Well, yeah, the research that we've done, they've said about 5% of your membership will be at the building on average. So if we open with 500 members, which is our goal, that's 25 people, and we would hope to double that. So you're not talking about 200 people up there on the roof. I mean, that isn't the model.
I mean, you've got a nice, what I'm working through, you've got a nice facility. You have a huge area on the second place for people to go, right? I mean, which is great. And I'm just trying to balance or try to think through like how that rooftop bar is there, how critical it is, because I mean, really, we're talking about a 2-hour period here, right? On Saturday and Sunday, we're talking about 4 hours a week. We've got a whole lot of people who've come out here to protest 4 hours a week, which I get. I got a party house across the street that's running this year. That they're, so they're trying to balance that with like, is it critical to your business model when you have so much other opportunity for people to go, and if people are actually going to use that space, or how you see that space utilized, and why it's so critical for you guys to hold on to it.
Charlie, could you talk about the research that we've done with?
Yeah, so we actually did a really large survey with about 200 people, and the number one amenity was actually the top two amenities was a rooftop terrace, and the second one was a rooftop pool. And so this, I alluded to it earlier about me living in Chicago, a rooftop terrace, a rooftop bar is really a staple of urban living. And so it's really important, it's really important to us just to have the flexibility to have people, if it's a Friday night or Saturday night, have the ability to go use the amenity that they're paying a membership for. So we view it, like I said, as like a staple of urban living, of being able to be outside at night on a rooftop and see the beauty of the city.
I'd agree with you, and I don't think anyone objects to that.
Right.
The exception of we're talking about 4 hours a week.
Right.
Can I add one other thing to that? Is that not only did that survey, did it come back as the number one amenity, but we had a very large percentage of people state that they would not join without it. Yeah. So it's not just an ancillary component of our product. It's actually, we think of those as like the most.
So if they're not able to hang out there from 10 to midnight on Friday and Saturday night,
we didn't ask that.
And I think, it didn't get that specific, but I think people from out of town, they think of like, joining this and being outside in an urban setting. I can't believe I'm in Salt Lake. I mean, that's the kind of feedback we've got.
To answer your question, though, it is important to us from 10 to midnight, partially because we don't understand how the business is going to operate. There might be people going up there to just enjoy the fresh air. I mean, that's half the enjoyment of a rooftop bar. So it is.
That's different from letting
important.
people hang out there than it is from having service and.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is between 10 and midnight. I mean, it might be a little cooler, so there might be fewer people up there. But having the flexibility is important to us.
And we're in Salt Lake. It's such a beautiful place. I mean, to be up on a bar on a Saturday night is pretty cool.
All right. Thanks.
So.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I want to follow up on that question then, Matt.
One second, Amy. Yeah. She wanted to raise one point.
I had a question. Maybe Amir could answer this. Since this is a recurring theme of our discussion and don't want to belabor it too much longer, but can you talk about the materials used on the rooftop level in terms of their ability to cancel or attenuate noise? Are there fabric panels? What kind of landscape is proposed in terms of small trees and planters or other things that are growing, particularly, warm summer months, that's when people are going to be out there. And then can you also speak to the east elevation of the building appears to be open, like behind the bar. And I don't know if there's any opportunity to provide that noise attenuation or curtains or, there's plenty of outdoor fabrics that could be used to help kind of eat up some of that sound. Thanks.
Sure. Maybe if we just start with the east elevation, I can tell you that because of the lot is so small and our program is so complex, we're already looking at enclosing this side completely for pool and pantries, bar storage, and other areas. So most likely we're not going to end up with any opening on this side. The other thing I wanted to add really quick is there was a comment about the east and north elevation being blank, and I can appreciate it, but one thing that we really haven't talked about is that how we're really going to articulate that elevation using brick in a very innovative way, so it won't be a plain brick facade. As far as the materials on the third level, you can see here that we have a variety of screens along the street. There is certainly opportunities to what Molly proposed, especially if we envision this place to be a place where we, watch movies at night with headphones, etc., to use sound attenuation and surfaces that can absorb sound and help that. Right now, we're still kind of early in the process. We haven't gotten to that level of detail. Our attempt simply with the massing on the rooftop, which you can see here, was really to create an enclosure that would contain that sound, particularly on the east facade where we're close to another building.
What's the roof over the bar? Is that aluminum?
That's envisioned as an aluminum or steel trellis that you can see over here. Yeah, that would help with sound attenuation as well. But those are areas where it could certainly help with that, selecting some of those finishes that are sound absorbed and not all hard surfaces. And as you know, furniture and lounge chairs and plants typically help with that as well.
And the west side, it's unclear to me, is that glass or is it open?
I think it's a mix.
All of the above.
Okay.
So on the west side, as we alluded to, we have the first level is larger.
I mean at the bar area.
Right here? Third level. Sorry.
Third level,
Right here?
by the pool. Is that open?
This is open to the street on
Open to the street.
There's a pool
glass.
between the bar and the
Glass. And there would be a glass railing, which we may even consider raising higher, just for safety reasons,
Okay.
to 6 feet, which would block some of that, any sound going
Okay.
onto the street.
Okay, can we have?
Back to
Oh,
Amy's
yeah,
question real
sorry.
fast.
I think Matt brought up this question, but it kind of got lost. Is your operation critical if the rooftop is still open until midnight, but you discontinue service at 10 or 11? So if you met with that kind of matches up with the noise ordinance, restricts a little bit more of your service operation up there, but it's still open, but people can't be continually getting drinks until midnight.
I mean, I think at this point, we would be happy to comply with whatever you request. I will say that I will make one last sort of pitch for the importance of maintaining an important entertainment and congregation space up there on the weekends. I think a lot of our members will join, and a lot of them will join for the rooftop, and particularly on the weekends, I think that will be a valuable space for them. But we'll comply with.
So I guess I really want to hear more of, is this critical if you discontinued service of alcohol in the bar at the rooftop at say on weekends at 11, but it's still open until midnight, so people can still be there, it's still activated to that midnight parameter, but you're not actively serving alcohol for that last hour. Is that a critical function, or does that still allow you to attain that level of entertainment?
That seems reasonable to me. I don't know, Jeff, if you have a.
Yeah, we obviously haven't talked about it, but it doesn't sound unreasonable.
That kind of came up with
Shut the bar
Matt, and I
down,
don't think it got necessarily fleshed out.
Yeah, you could shut the bar down, I mean, at 11, yeah.
All right, any other questions?
I have a question for Ashley.
Oh, Ashley's back.
Ashley, you're back. So Ashley, the conditional use we are requiring a security and operations plan, which has many of these issues about sound compliance and so on and so forth in it. Does the police department have any wiggle room when it comes to the requirements of a security and operations plan?
What kind of wiggle room?
Oh, well, maybe they increase the decibels or the 15 feet or live entertainment or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is there, or it's has to absolutely answer to all of these things? And where are we on that anyway?
I think at minimum it would have to comply with those standards. I think those could be made more strict if you chose to apply conditions. But on that, so the draft security and operations plan has been sent to the police. I haven't gotten feedback on it yet, and we're recommending all those items as conditions of approval, which is kind of pretty standard for whenever our bars get the seek conditional use approval.
So I understand that unless they fulfill all of the conditional use statements that we put into this approval or disapproval, if we approve it, is that is checked by the building department, correct?
Planning and building, yes.
So so the issue about parking and where it would actually be located, that would have to be an agreement that would actually have been executed in order for that to happen.
Documented, executed lease agreement for the parking, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Sorry, one last question for the applicant. So the part that is directly over the bar seating area is kind of open panels, right? And that's like slotted panels, and then there's an open back. I mean, I'm back and forth on the whole. I think whether it's here or in the future, we're going to have more rooftop bars coming to Salt Lake City. I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be here. But it seems like to me, if you would enclose that whole area that's over the seating area, not like the one side on the west, but like you can close the east side on the top, that would authentically direct the noise significantly away from their building. And if you were to put sound curtains or something, could even be pulled off so you're not, which you would need to then because you'd be enclosed, so you're not reflecting off that concrete, it would also significantly improve the lives of the neighbors. Probably while not really needing to change the hours necessarily, but I mean, is that something that you are?
So
is your architecture pretty solid?
Well, we had actually talked about that already, and so we actually landed on the slatting because we think it gives value to both the Broadway lofts nearest to us and our members. Where if you're outside, you want to be under the sky, and so the slatting was a way for us to mitigate noise, but also have that feeling of being underneath the sky.
Did you look at a way that you could close the slats?
We might want to defer to Amir about that because he's given us a lot of the feedback.
I mean, like possible to turn them so they close or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like either a garage door type thing or a slot that you could close that would allow. During rain or snow or whatever else would allow you to actually enclose the area.
I want to make sure we understand the question. Are we talking about this area? Which area are we specifically?
Yes, I'm talking about those slats across the top. Is there something you could put, that would come over those or would close them, so you could close those at 10, and then you'd have a wall in the back. So then people could still go outside, hang out by the pool, in the 4-foot pool. My kids would love that, but I'm sure they're not invited.
21 points. When they're 21,
it's a millennial thing.
Yeah, 4
How
feet.
old are your kids?
So, but like if you could close though, I mean, because then your sound really is directed to the west and kind of up and out rather than. And if you're enclosing that more and using sound curtains or whatever things to kind of keep it from like reverberating back and forth and up and out, you are creating a space that is much more.
As Charlie alluded to, we feel that leaving that somewhat open is important so that you don't feel you're hanging out in a little enclosed canopy area. We can certainly look into sound attenuating louvers, which would help with some of that. At the end of the day, we can look at a lot of options to mitigate sound, but there's never going to be a way to completely eliminate it. The sound is going to leak eventually one way or the other, right? Unless we completely enclose that entire floor. We can certainly do our best to direct the sound towards the street and not the adjacent
You could
residential
do a
building.
surprising amount with panels and audio.
Mm.
I mean, it's shocking how much you can do.
Yeah, to us, the trade-off between if that were the option versus staying, like closing at 10, like for sure, you know, we would definitely be interested in exploring that with the mayor.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and this was kind of the compromise that we had arrived at, which is still allow us to have sky over, but you have some materials that are going to mitigate noise.
But we're open to the
thanks.
suggestion, for sure.
All right, I think we probably need to bring this back to the commission now, unless anybody else has any last questions.
I have one more question. So you said you were hoping for 500 members to begin with. Do you have a maximum number of members that you would be allowing in? And how would those members be chosen?
Well, so should I give that a shot? I think the model at 1,500 would be probably maximum. We've talked to a lot of other operators, and if you think about that 5%, it would be, you know, 75 people inside the club on average. And how do we curate the memberships? You know, Amir had alluded, like we told him, we want this to be an inclusive club that will reflect the New Salt Lake. And so we have strategies of reaching out to like the creative community, the LGBTQ community, the minority community. And so we want to curate a professional club that looks like the New Salt Lake. So we've got we've had long strategic meetings around that question.
So you don't have any plans to market to people on the west side, or people who are not professionals, or people who are not, and you probably don't have any programs for people who can't afford your membership fees?
Yeah, so the membership fees are going to maybe be about $160 a month, which, you know, does probably create some barrier to certain people. But if you think of the Salt Lake Country Club's 900, I mean, it's a much more approachable number. And if I can just say too, we have, you know, I'm just going to speak for our family. We have a lot of sensitivity around that question. And I run a scholarship program up at the University of Utah where we give free ride 4-year scholarships to minorities and underprivileged kids on the west side. So we anticipate, and our plan is to be good citizens of the community.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation and your time tonight. Let's bring this back to the commission. Is there discussion? Thoughts?
I didn't participate in the earlier part very much, but I'm a neighbor. These guys are gonna be a block away from me. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that we don't want noise in downtown. I get that we have the noise ordinances, and I think we hold to that, but I have my windows open. I like the noise, and if that's part of what drew me to downtown, is this very specific kind of lifestyle. So I don't understand why we've just spent almost an hour and a half on something that we're trying to mitigate downtown noise. That's my 2 cents. I just don't understand it. I think this is a great addition to downtown, and I don't know why we're putting limits on them other than what already exists.
Okay. Other thoughts from the commission?
I'll make a motion.
All right, let's hear it.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move the commission approve the 2 conditional use requests to construct a new social club that contains multiple land uses at 335 South, 200 West, as presented in petition PLN PCM 2019-671, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report 1 through 5, with the additional condition that the east wall is solid, and that there are, some use of noise mitigating materials used within the walls directly surrounding the standing bar on the rooftop.
Okay, we have a motion by Matt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a second by Carolyn. Any discussion?
I think it's, I guess what was the additional condition? That some use of sound attenuating materials be, it just
Matt
seems hard to
added a
enforce and define.
If I may, Matt added a condition to make the east wall solid and not have a void or opening, and to add noise mitigating materials surrounding or in the vicinity of the rooftop bar.
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
Yes. Just want to make sure that we captured that.
Do I need to be more specific on noise mitigating?
No, I think
it's hard to place that condition because I think, one, as Amir said, I don't know that it will work because it's not an enclosed space. It might stop echoing and reverberation, but I don't think it'll completely contain that. And then some use of noise mitigating materials can be one cushion to something that costs millions of dollars. So I think it's a difficult condition to. I mean, I guess we can just put it on, but it will
panels, I mean,
I think it's hard for us to define what that is now, though, as a condition.
So the condition, though, would be something that they would have to satisfy when they go.
I mean, is there
for
another
building permits?
And the building department determines whether that is
And we
satisfied
could-
or not?
it would be reviewed by planning and the building department.
so final approval of my noise mitigating features delegated to planning staff.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We will start the vote. Matt?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Weston?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate everyone's comments and feedback. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda, a conditional use for a fuel station at approximately 938 North, 900 West. And Mayara will be giving the presentation.
Yeah. Not very happy with the decision either.
Okay, so this one is also a conditional use, and it was made by the property owner to allow a gas station on the property located at approximately 938 North, 900 West. The property currently features a convenience store, a propane tank dispenser, and a large parking area. The applicant is proposing to maintain the convenience store, remove the propane tank dispenser, and build a new canopy with 4 two-sided fuel dispensers underneath it, and install an underground fuel storage tank. As the site plan shows, one of the 4 curb cuts will be removed and the area replaced with landscaping. Proposed on-site circulation will not affect driveway access, on-street and sidewalk traffic, nor the established parking area for the existing convenience store. The proposed development will also accommodate adequate vehicle stacking lanes. The proposed canopy will be 108 feet deep by 24 feet wide and 18.5 feet high, and the design is typical of a gas station. The property sits on the eastern edge of Rose Park neighborhood and abuts I-15. It is located very close to the freeway exit and entrance. And then we find in the neighborhood area 4 gas stations located on the southern and western edges of the neighborhood. Those are the stars highlighted over there, all at a distance of at least a mile from the property. The map shows that the proposed use would be an appropriate location in that it has the potential to serve abutting residents of Rose Park and drivers traveling on the freeway without disrupting the pattern of the neighborhood. The property is also located in a neighborhood commercial node, and is surrounded by a diversity of uses. The properties directly to the north and south are zoned CB and are used for park and ride lot, a retail establishment, and a vacant lot. There are single-family dwellings to the west across 900 West and light manufacturing to the east across I-15. There are also 2 multifamily complexes, retail establishments, and restaurants in the immediate surroundings. So the use fits into the context of the area. It is also important to note that the proposed gas station will not change the use of the land, which has been historically commercial. The new use, however, will increase the intensity of use of the property and may create new visual, noise, and traffic impacts to abutting residential properties. To mitigate these impacts, the proposed development will comply with lighting and signage standards applicable to the zoning district, and the applicant is proposing business hours from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m., which should limit traffic and noise impacts to daytime. In considering the applicable master plans, both the Northwest Community Master Plan and the Rose Park Small Area Plan strongly encourage the revitalization of commercial nodes like this one to make these areas more attractive to businesses, improve the streetscape and area appearance. The subject area in particular is highlighted in the plans as a redevelopment site and an entrance to the Rose Park neighborhood and gateway into the city from I-15. The proposed development would help the immediate area by adding a use to an underutilized lot and help creating a more cohesive neighborhood. In addition, this development would enhance the streetscape and improve the pedestrian experience if including the urban design elements of these master plans. So planning staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use with the conditions that the proposed development incorporate additional park strip trees. The photo on top there shows what it looks like now, and delineate the parking areas and provide parking lot landscaping on the north portion of the lot, which is the photo on the bottom. These will help to create a more attractive environment, minimize the impacts of this new use that's car-oriented, and ultimately fulfill the goals of the applicable master plans.
I have a question for Mayara. In the department review, the police recommend additional lighting. And I'm wondering, what is the lighting requirements for a gas station currently in the ordinances, or do you have any?
So the lightings I'm referencing are avoiding glaring to residential properties and the height of lighting poles if they decide to put those in. I imagine that the canopy itself can provide enough lighting, so if the lighting underneath the canopy is enough, we will be happy to just have that. But we don't have a standard for the gas station to have a certain number
Okay,
of
so did you review when the police comments came in that they recommend additional lighting? They recognize the glare to the neighbors to the west, but they thought that additional lighting would be warranted in this particular location. And did you review that or look into that?
No, so that's what my understanding was the canopy itself would provide enough lighting, but that if we feel like that's not appropriate, that was put as a condition that they have to comply with department comments. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mayara?
What type of landscaping will be provided?
For the parking lot?
Yes.
So the ordinance has requirements for parking lot landscaping, and that's what I was referring to. So if the parking stalls are located close to 20 feet to the property line, they have to have a perimeter parking landscaping. And depending on how many stalls they have, they might have to have interior landscaping. We don't specifically says what material needs to be. So if they wanted to just put grass, they can just put grass.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Okay, if you'd like to make a presentation, please come forward. Just please state your name for the record before speaking, and you'll
Hello,
have
my
10
name
minutes.
is Sharanjit Singh. I'm the owner of the property,
And Eddie Nasir, day shift manager.
Rick Reese, I'm the one that will be delivering the fuel as well as the one bringing the Chevron brand to them.
Great. Do you have anything you'd like to add to the presentation from staff?
My plan on landscaping is xeriscaping, is what my plan is on that.
Great. Do we have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Thank
I would
you.
just follow up on the police comment about lighting. So do you feel additional lighting is warranted to keep this area a little bit more lit?
I will agree, and the lighting from the canopy should be sufficient.
Okay.
I'd be happy to provide any more lighting if the city would request it beyond what the canopy would provide.
Question, like, what type of lighting do you have now for the convenience store?
Right now, on the windows, LED lighting. On the exterior, we have a tube high-intensity white lighting, and that's what probably would stay there, but the canopy, nowadays, they're using with LED lighting.
Yeah, it will be some down lighting. It will actually light that area up pretty well. The other thing that it will do is it's not going to do fugitive light out much past the street, which is probably the best thing for that, but it's going to be very bright in that existing area all the way up to the convenience store, as well as it will light that northern area up pretty well.
Has a photometric plan been done for that lighting? So you know actually how far the light spreads and to what degree?
No. You can see what the average gas station lighting is. From that, you can get a good sense on how much light is emitted exterior to the gas station's properties. And it is sufficient to cover a sidewalk, but not go across the street.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. You all may step back.
Thank you.
We will now open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak? Okay, come forward. And please state your name for the record. And are you here representing the community council or just on behalf of yourself?
Camilla Fowler, representing myself and my husband. We are property owners in Rose Park, and we live directly across the street from the convenience store. First of all, my concerns are not a personal attack on the convenience store. I think you're doing a great job as property owners and working really hard to make that a success. I do have some serious concerns. I think a gas station itself isn't really the serious concern that I have. To your question about the lighting, recently there was a police camera there for several weeks observing the area. How we view the current situation at this convenience store is we see often an issue with prostitution and with drug trafficking or drug dealing. There's also an issue with trash that comes over to the property owners, and this is also a contribution from the smoke shop next door. So my question is as far as the gas station, well, right now, as far as security for some of these issues, what's being done about it? What further security precautions will be taken, and who will be responsible for that, the gas station owner or the convenience store owners? As far as the current noise, it's open until 12 a.m. There is noise issues from that because people pull up, they're playing their music loud. We have complained about it, and I know it's difficult to ask your customers to turn down their music in their cars, but bass being very loud is very common several times during the week, late at night. Lighting, you see light from across the street when you live directly across the street. So additional lighting I could see for security reasons, but it would definitely be a disruption. And then what's the protocol for further community input down the road if there's any issues? The hours of operation, again, is an issue as far as the convenience store currently being open until 12 a.m. and opening at 5 a.m. There's a lot of people coming in and out of off the freeway. So perhaps the hours could be moved to close earlier. Disaster protocol, if there's a leak, and what research has been done to show that we actually need a gas station right there, given that there's a few within a 1 mile radius, and there's also one right off of 600 North. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here who would wish to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission. Does anyone have questions for staff or the applicant? What's that?
Sorry, I want to give the applicant an opportunity to respond.
Sorry. Would you guys like to come back and respond to those specific questions from the public?
Sure. With regards to Chevron has a couple things that they actually will put the convenience store through. They have what they call a customer first, as well as an image program. That store will be actually mystery shopped on an average of 6 times per year, as well as they will have an image evaluation 3 times a year. And if they do not pass those image shops and or those customer first shops, they will be debranded, meaning that store will no longer be a Chevron. There's certain things that they will have to abide by. Those things will be lighting. They will be also that everybody will have to make sure that they are clean restrooms, that their parking lots are clean. Everything is being done and handled correctly. The employees are clean. That the forecourt, which is what we call the convenience store out by the gasoline, everything is maintained. That everything is painted and looks correct. They cannot have any handwritten signs on the windows, those types of things. All of those things will be handled on a day in, day out basis. When Chevron comes into an area, that's what they want to have. They want this convenience store to look like a neighbor. That's why Chevron carries with themselves the #1 brand in the West for a convenience store. The other thing that was asked with regards to why did we look at this store, I know that Sharon went through and did an actual site study on this site and has looked at this site, and this site really will actually do an excellent job, and they saw an opportunity here as a site study for cars coming down through the area as well as pulling cars off the freeway. So, and it will be an excellent site. It's going to improve that area, both for an aesthetic point of view as well as it will clean up the area from what there is there right now. So,
yeah, we did a survey a couple of years how after getting the fuel pumps, how our business will grow and all that. So service, it comes really, really, really well. So that's why we took a step. So why not put a gas station here? So it's better for us, for community too. So who drives every day to work and get a gas and grab their coffee and just leave to work and,
I know that we are putting in close to $250,000 into this project of our own money to help with this, Chevron is. So that's the type of basis that they're willing to support this at. So.
And will so you talked about requirements for the store itself. Are there current conditions that you think will be improved immediately? And can you talk about those on day one when the fuel canopy is open?
Oh, sure.
Are there certain things about the store right now that we can expect
especially the
improvements
exterior to? Will be all new. We're redoing the all exterior. Parking lot will be brand new. The landscaping stuff and everything will be improved. New signs are coming. Nice, clean restrooms. will be there. Oh, yeah.
Can you speak to the security concern?
I can speak to security. I'm the security officer as well for the store. In charge of video security and physical security. When I see problem, I handle it. I am very affirmative with my directions that I tell people. I am very thorough and deliberate on what I do, on how I want my store. I came from a neighborhood store which was rated one of the cleanest in the city, in Bountiful. I ran that store. I intend to improve the store, and already have improved it by the quality of the material in the store, by the cleanliness in the store. That's my focus. Cleanliness and security is my focus. I guarantee you I will stay on top of that. That's my mission.
So I'm curious if, I don't know how long you've been at that store, but if you would be open to then meeting with the neighbors or having an open dialogue with them continually to address if there are issues that are up for them but haven't been dealt with, if that's going to be part of your plan as well.
I would be happy to address anything that the city has concerns with the store's concerns. I understand.
Yeah, I'm mainly talking about an open dialogue that's continual with those neighbors that live across the street. It seems that projects that have that capacity to work with the neighbors are much more successful long-term, to have that open dialogue, because...
I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
Most definitely.
Any other questions for the applicant? Any other comments in response from the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any discussion among the commission?
Does the city have a requirement that a photometric plan be produced for this property, or is that not a planning requirement? A lot of cities have that as a requirement for any commercial development.
Is that a question for Molly?
Or are you
Yes.
looking for like a rendering of what it's
Or-
going to
or
look
Mary.
like? Is it?
A photometric lighting study, so it'll be a plan that shows light levels.
We don't
Not
do
a
that. If there is an issue with glaring, that's an enforcement situation. And then we'll go from there.
Would it be appropriate to ask for that on this? It's not a very expensive thing, and most cities require it anyway.
You can make it a condition
A condition of the approval.
of your approval, sure.
Okay, any other discussion? Somebody want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Based on the information listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the commission approve the request for conditional use for a fuel station at 938 North, 900 West, as presented in petition PLN PCN 2019-00613, with the conditions listed in the staff report, and with the condition that the applicant present a photometric lighting plan to be approved by the planning department and the police department. Is that okay?
I don't know that the
Not-
police are
I don't
going to
know.
be able to
That
tell
it
you
was
whether or
there.
not that's a high or low level of lighting. I think they want to make sure that it's
Sufficient.
sufficiently lit to assuage any
The photometric
security
plan will be pretty
concerns.
clear as to
But
whether it's
Yeah,
lit.
I
in
think
dark
the other
corners.
concern that I would advise to think about is making sure not to overlight it, so that
There's
properties to the south in particular, but also to the north, are then not so dark that you have night blindness. That's where the security concerns will end up happening.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what that's the point of that study, is that it'll give you that information.
Yeah, I would limit your
Just to the planning
your
department.
condition to delegate to planning staff.
Okay.
Delegate the review of the photometric plan, is that the term?
Photometric plan, yes.
To planning staff.
Okay, with the condition listed in the staff report, and that the applicant submit a photometric plan to be reviewed by planning staff.
Okay, we have a motion by Darren.
I'll second.
Second by Brenda. Any discussion?
Are there standards that they would be needing to look at, excuse me, with that plan? When they presented that plan, would staff understand what they are trying to mitigate with that plan?
We'll have to do some research to figure out what level of lighting we want to achieve, but I'm sure that is publicly available.
That should be really easy to find. Almost every city requires that. So I think it should be easy.
Okay. Let's start the vote. Oh, go ahead.
Fine.
Now let's vote. Amy?
So I'm not in support of the photometric plan, so I'm going to vote no because of that addition.
Okay. Maureen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Weston?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
We have 2 noes and 7 yeses, so motion passes. Your conditional use permit was approved. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Third item on the agenda, the Denver Street Plan Development at approximately 537 South Denver, 532 South, and 538 South, 500 East.
Okay, this is not my project, but I'm covering for
But
Kelsey.
you're covering it. Thank you,
Yes.
Myra.
Okay, so this one is a planned development and a preliminary subdivision is a request by 537 Denver LLC, represented by Tyson Williamson, for a planned development and preliminary subdivision approval for the construction of 11 townhomes on 537 South Denver, 532 South, and 538 South 500 East. The planned development request includes the following modifications: reduction of the required front yard for both the Denver Street and 500 East elevations to allow a second-story balcony encroachment, the creation of a double frontage lot, and the creation of lots without street frontage. The project covers an area approximately 0.45 acres, which is over 19,000 square feet in size. The subject properties are located between 500 and 600 South and 500 East and Denver Street. The proposal includes 2 frontages, 500 East for the eastern portion and Denver Street for the western portion. The 3 properties are located within the RMF 45 zoning district. The proposed plan development is comprised of 3 separate structures. Each structure is oriented east to west. The 2 largest structures, which are about 500 East, contain 4 units, and the smaller unit fronting Denver Street contains 3 units. The vehicular and pedestrian access runs through the center and parallel to the structures. All but 1 unit within the development is accessed from 500 East. The unit access from Denver Street is the unit which faces that street. The singular access will limit the traffic impact on Denver Street. The remaining 2 units in that building will have access and parking provided from the 500 East access. The proposed orientation preserves the existing access point from Denver Street and mimics the number of structures located on the subject properties. The 500 East elevations contain an entrance on the main level and an overhanging balcony on the 2nd story. Each material is articulated differently to provide for further facade interest. Each elevation contains a variety of materials. The first floor of each elevation consists of cast stone, which transitions to metal siding, fiber cement siding, and synthetic stucco on the upper floors. Each building is approximately 29 feet 5 inches in height. The 500 East building encroaches into the required 25 feet front yard setback by approximately 3 feet. The encroachment is to accommodate a 2nd-story balcony on the street-facing elevations. That provides both for facade and pedestrian interest along 500 East. The Denver street elevation contains an entrance, attached garage, and an overhanging balcony. That building also encroaches into the required 25 feet front yard setback by approximately 5 feet. The interior elevations of the 5-unit structures, which are the buildings facing 500 East, are oriented toward the pedestrian and vehicle access into the site. The units all contain an attached garage, entrance, and a second-story balcony. The rear elevations face Trolley Place Apartments to the north and another multifamily housing to the south. Each unit contains an access to the exterior, and these elevations contain slight roof projections. The interior elevation of the 3-unit building, which faces Denver Street, contains the main entrance to the middle unit. The rear elevation, which faces Trolley Place, has roof extensions similar to the other 2 buildings. And then the other interior elevation of that Denver Street building mirrors the front facade, so the same facade as Denver Street. The development includes 2 varying street frontage. The 500 East neighborhood context includes moderately scaled residential structures to the south and the north of the subject properties. This is a picture of the Trolley Square apartment, which is directly to the north on 500 East. This is the home that was on Denver Street but has been demolished, and it's one of the subject properties. This is the home on Denver Street and abuts the subject property to the south, to the south of the project. Sorry. As discussed within the staff report in attachment F, the proposal is in line with the Central Community Master Plan, the city's 5-year housing plan, and Plan Salt Lake. Discussed in attachment G, staff has reviewed the proposal and found that it complies with the adopted standards for plan developments. Additionally, through the public process and analysis, staff has received comments regarding off-street parking along Denver Street. The proposed development provides 2 stalls per unit on site for the development and 2 additional guest parking stalls. These numbers exceed the minimum required. Staff has also received comments about a property line and easement access dispute between 537 South Denver and 539 South Denver. Staff has informed both parties that the city will not become involved in a civil dispute. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the plan development and preliminary subdivision plat as proposed.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
If the property line dispute proves that the line is somewhere other than what is shown on the plans, then all the plans will be resubmitted to staff, or what's the process at that point?
They may need to modify and come back to you.
Or they'd have to come back to us if the property lines were not as shown on these plans.
If they can't meet what they're proposing right here in the site plan, then they would have to come back. They would have to amend the plan
Commission,
development.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions right now? Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward?
My name's Tyson Williamson. I'm representing 537 Denver. So she actually covered almost everything I have in here, but I thought on some of those elevations, I wanted to show some of the color. As we were designing the product, we wanted to make sure that it fit really well into the neighborhood. It adds a lot of additional housing, which Salt Lake City needs, and it's unique housing. It's kind of the missing middle that gets talked about a lot. But we wanted to make sure it fit in its design. We've seen buildings that have large stretches of just stucco and limited movement in the design materials. So we wanted to ensure that that was considered. So let me quickly just go through this. The site's located in this location, which we've already talked about. It contains 3 parcels, and the site plan, as was well described. Another thing that was really important to us was the access and the parking. So the neighbors have spoken a lot about the Denver Street. Denver Street's a very skinny street. If you're driving through that and someone's coming, you actually have to pull off to the side of the road while they come down the road. And so as we designed the project, only one unit can access the project from that west side. You can see it up here. The nice thing about this unit too is it has the 2-car garage, but then it also has enough space for 2 additional parking if visitors came. So that's not counted in the overall total, but that is a reality of that particular unit. The remaining 10 units all are accessed off 500 East, and that was a very, we definitely pursued that to lessen the impacts on Denver Street. Some of the elevations, just to show more color and context, I want to jump here. So this is that interior facing, the product faces itself. On 500 East, the bottom right-hand image, we worked a lot with Kelsey on this. When we first brought our drawings in, we actually had limited activation on 500 East, and they were a little dull. And so with Kelsey, we worked through that, wrapped a lot of the products from the interior courtyard to that outer area. We added a privacy fence to give it a little bit more dimension and actually increased our landscaping. So we wanted to make sure that as you drove down the road, this didn't get lost in it, but it actually had a presence and it looked beautiful and added value to the neighborhood. So Kelsey did a really good job, giving us wise counsel on that. This is the north face, or on the other fourplex, the south face. This is what will face the neighbors. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we've seen a lot of products where the stucco is continuous from top to bottom. We wanted to create something that had a little bit more dynamic to it, a little more color and added value to the neighborhood. So that bottom portion is the stone. Then the white is stucco, but then those gray areas are the metal paneling. Here's the property on Denver Street with those additional, as you can see, there's a car parked out there. So they have the 2-car garage within, and then they can park on the outside as is shown there, with only pedestrian traffic heading back towards the east into the property. Here's the elevation that would actually be seen from the property to the south at 539 Denver. So we tried once again to add a lot of color and mixture of materials. Those elevations. Anyway, we're really excited about this project. We feel like it adds valuable housing to the area. We tried to be really considerate of how to utilize the site. It's a tight site. It's a very long site because we are consolidating the 3 parcels. But I think we've done a good job at designing something that will add additional housing units, not really impact the overall look and feel you get in Denver Street. It keeps Denver Street still a very quiet street, but yet gets enough density. We're allowed in the RMF 45 to get up to 13 units, and we're only doing 11 on this. We have, the community green space and, bicycle racks and many of the things. We do like the fact that the pedestrian traffic is from east to west, and it does connect through, so people can come through. At one time, there was some consideration of fences and gates, and we eliminated that to make it kind of more open to not only the residents, but the local community. So that's the overall development. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Question.
Talk me through, I'd like to see more. My biggest concern about the project is really the concern along or activation of 5th East.
Okay.
Talk me more about where you've come from and where you've gone, and really, because it still looks like you got a lot of wall, and like what in both 2 and 3, and like what's kind of there, and if there's other. It just seems like there's just a lot of wall there.
Yeah, and I understand that, and we talked to Kelsey, and it's a little difficult because it's not terribly wide at that point. Originally what happened is, as you can see, this white almost dominated the whole face. So the gray, we added the wrapped wood. We actually added this portion of the balcony, which is one of the variances that we're requesting to activate that. The door used to face interior, now it faces out to the street. And then we've seen some of the neighboring townhome projects do this, where they add They add the fenced area, gives it a little more dynamic in materials, and also gives some proportion to the site, and then we increased the landscaping. So originally, it was extremely bland, and I hear what you're saying on the fact that there is still a white wall. We had looked at projecting some of that out and adding some different materials, but we're actually limited on our available projections within the code. I think we're only allowed 4 inches. So at one time we were considering popping this out a little bit and giving it color, but a 4-inch projection is difficult to wrap. At best it might just be a different color stucco.
Is there a stairwell that comes up that kind of
Yeah.
south northeast corner? Is
Yeah.
that the deal that kind of comes through there?
Yeah.
And does that top unit go all the way through those big glass windows down further?
It does. Yep. This is 1 bedroom, and this is the 2nd bedroom. This is kind of the family
area.
room with the kitchen in the back, and then you've got a half bathroom right behind the wood.
And you clearly have the floor plan reversed on the next unit over.
Yeah.
Did you consider having the floor plan where all those windows in that nice sort of area is, you could just do a lot more over on that east side with the stairs going up on the west side of that unit, which would give more life, or is that did you explore that or no?
So I think one of the reasons we didn't is because if we do that, then we'll just have a complete box down here with no pedestrian activity. So if I understand what you're saying, you're essentially saying that the access to the first unit would come back at that after the first garage, and then enhancing the windows out here on the outer edge. Is that kind of what you're saying? Inversing the unit, is that?
You look like a side of a house,
Yeah.
as it is now. And we've just had a lot of these properties come through, and I've been the stick in the mud that doesn't like side of houses on front streets. So has Weston. He'll weigh in here too, maybe. But I'm just wondering, like, if there was more that could have been done other than just, I get the design features, and I think that's certainly added something, but that hasn't really addressed this problem, where the problem that we're trying to, and I'm sure staff kind of discussed with you, but the problem that I think the commission is trying to address is this problem where the city's becoming like in-looking, where we have all these properties that with long lots that kind of look in, and there's nothing on the, so that as you drive down or walk down, it's all sides of buildings.
Sure, the deep blocks are complicated.
And I'm just wondering, like, we're trying to move in a direction. You have improvements over what we've seen. I will say that, and I think, and thanks to staff for trying to move you. But I'm just trying to keep. It still seems like there could be more done in this property that would just give more life to that 5th East side. What you've done on Denver Street, I do appreciate. I'm not a huge fan necessarily of a garage right there on the thing, but I get what you've done. I get the not lot. I'm actually good with what you've done. Accommodating Denver Street as a narrow corner sort of thing. I'm totally supportive of that. And that looks like the front of a house.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you could have done more here, either and not just in playing with the exterior, but actually playing with a layout that would have been more effective in activating that front.
So the layout of
spot.
these is slightly less than ideal in the sense that they actually we typically like doing a townhome that's a little bit wider and deeper, and these have just, because of the site, they just kind of turn into these little boxes.
Can you go to your 3rd level plan on the 4-plex unit?
I don't have it in this slide deck.
It's page 18 of the...
That's
the
in
other
the
one.
staff report.
It is
It's
in the
not
staff report.
It seems like you could just move the closet and be able to open up another window, and it would accomplish what he's... I'm sorry.
Who's Matt?
What Matt is asking for, without changing
it's not
stairwells and...
Okay, so let me look at this. If you're all looking at 18 on yours, I'm going to flip back
All right,
to
it's
that.
page 18 of the drawing
And
set. I don't know
she
what page of
She
the
gave
staff
me that,
report.
so I have that in front of me. But
Of the drawing set.
yeah, and I don't have that in any of the digital format that you can see on the screen. I do have it here. I see what you're referencing.
Well,
We've
there's
got
that little narrow high window that I believe is going into a closet.
That's correct, yeah.
Seems like that closet could pretty easily be relocated, and that could be a large window into a bedroom, which I think would eliminate the idea that this looks like a side of a house and make it look more like the front of a house. My suggestion would be that the middle closet gets flipped and is used by the outside bedroom, and that closet that's currently, I know that we can't, but that closet that's currently on that wall gets moved and is the other bedroom's
So
closet?
we actually tried, a little genesis on that whole plan design. We actually tried to combine those closets together because we felt like it was lacking wall space. Many residents like to have a wall where they can put their TV in. As you can see, this one doesn't really have that, particularly in that second unit, second bedroom. The other bedroom is the master bedroom. As far as moving that closet, that bedroom right now sits just at about 10'10". We're pretty limited on the ability to swap the closet. That being said, the size of the window could change. It would just be, in essence, a larger window within the closet. I do think that would add a little bit more dynamic to the elevation, but I don't know if it would be terribly dramatic.
I think that is the challenge, is that window into a closet. But
I don't mind having a window. Anyways, I'm just...
Any other?
There would be fairly easy ways to create more openness on that east facade. I have a question. Is the privacy fence, can you tell me a little more about that, how tall it is and what it's made of?
So the privacy fence will sit about 42 inches tall, and it's made out of a Trex type material. So it will be more of a screen than a privacy fence.
Great. I think it's important to me that stays at about 42 inches tall and does not become a 6 or 8 foot tall fence that would preclude any connection from the residents to the street.
Completely agree.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We'll ask you to step back. We will now open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak? Okay, sir, please come forward. And please make sure to state your name into the microphone for the record.
Hello, my name's Bob Rocky Manchego. I live on 537 Denver Street, right next to the project there. I've been in that neighborhood from 1965. I grew up in that neighborhood. Bought that house in '78. So I've been there quite a few years, and there's a light pole back there. There's been a lot of access through there. There's a lot of this hasn't been recognized or recorded on easements and everything through that area. So I'm kind of concerned about that right now, and we're waiting for this hearing to come to see how that's going to come out. And I'm hoping that that's my issue, but for the people who live on Denver Street, the big issue is the parking on that street. We already have an issue on that right now, so I was just hoping that we could maybe look making them smaller, less people in there, because them little, sorry, I'm so nervous, but some of those garages that they have on there, they can't get in trucks or anything like that, so everybody's parking out on the streets on some of the condos that are there now. Since I've been there, been there all my life pretty much, but I'm just seeing a lot of issues with parking on that street. So if we could just maybe make them a little smaller, and so they have a little less people, I don't know, I just keep it on the 5th East side more or less for right now. But hopefully it looks good in front of 5th East. It's nice, but it's just Denver Street's really overpacked right now with the cars and issues there. And people, my issue is when they build that up and they're going to be looking in my backyard, and I have a 72 square foot storage unit back there. Now I can't access it right now. Well, I can right now until this issue becomes what happens with this issue. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe they could help them out, maybe put some more car parking right in that area and keep everything over there for all the people that live on this LLC area, and have a little gate they can probably go in and go through there, and so they, at least when their friends come over or family coming over, they got a place to park.
Okay,
Because
great.
it's tough enough as it is now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Would the applicant like to come back and address some of the concerns raised?
Yeah, so as we just...
Just a point of order, the public comment period is still open.
Sorry, it's been a very long week for me.
No
Is
worries.
there anybody else who'd like to, okay, we will close the public hearing. Apologies. You can come back. Thank you, Amy.
So the neighbor's comment to the south, currently, well, the house isn't there anymore, but 537 Denver, the image that you saw earlier, it had 2 parking stalls. It did have a driveway to the back, which had a separate garage, but essentially now it's kind of going from 2 with maybe 1 in the back to 4. So it has the 2 within the garage and then the 2 out here. So we feel like we're adding parking to Denver Street. And his point is valid that Denver Street's tight. And I don't know exactly who parks on it, but we feel pretty confident the way we've designed this actually adds 1 extra stall. So
And then how many stalls? There's a unit behind?
yeah, so, and I apologize, this isn't the best way to point it all out. So the most western unit has the 2-car garage and the 2 parking stalls. The interior unit doesn't have a parking garage, but it has 2 dedicated stalls here. They're dedicated for that particular unit. And then this one is another larger unit which has its own garage. So, and then as was mentioned earlier, each of the other units has a 2-car garage, and then there's also 2 stalls. So the 10 units that will be fed off of 500 East essentially have 22 stalls. So 20 is the requirement for RMF 45, and we gave 22. And then that additional 2 plus 2 over here on that 1 unit that faces Denver Street.
So to follow up with that, I personally think you've done a really good, thoughtful job on Denver to try and limit. And I am not a fan of gates. And I like that you have this thoroughfare east to west, but I'm wondering if, to maybe discourage further parking on Denver, that on that pedestrian walkway part from Denver, that you do have some sort of a gate, that pedestrian gate, not a vehicle gate, because you can't drive through there. But if you look at the walkway on the south side of that Denver-facing unit,
You're saying to gate that and somehow make that accessed only by the tenants and not the community?
I'm just wondering if you considered a way to further discourage guest parking on Denver who, I'm going to park on Denver and just walk right through here, to one of those further east-facing or eastern units. Because I think what you've done in terms of for the tenants and those 2 additional for the Denver-facing is very thoughtful, and I appreciate that. I think that was, that's a really good thing. I'm just wondering if you think that further discouragement for guests to park on Denver might be some sort of
gate on there.
Some sort of a gate.
In between that first unit. So,
Yeah.
and this is all theory, right? We can't predict human habits, but I would assume the only unit that would, I would assume the unit that someone may try and park off Denver would be that middle unit. It just seems likely that the farther you get towards 5th East, you'll come off 5th East. And then Denver is hard to park on, so 5th East seems to always have open spots to park on. So as far as discriminating or adding a fence, I would prefer not to do that for a myriad of reasons. I'd like to keep it open and to make it feel open to the public so that someone who lives on Denver Street could come up through and cut across. We're very open to that. We want that. Like I said, the original design actually had gates and access, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to open it up. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay.
I think keeping that pathway open to the public is nice in terms of a sort of feeling of inviting neighbors to come and be part of that community. I understand the parking.
I totally actually agree with that. I was just exploring the thoughts of it. I hate gates. So I agree with keeping it open.
Yeah, they always seem to break too, HOA management nightmare, so.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any additional questions, comments? Does
I'll make a
anyone?
motion.
Great.
Go ahead. I've done already. Maureen, it's all you.
All right. I'll make a motion
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move the Planning Commission approve PLN SUB 2019-00716 and PLN SUB 2019-00717 as proposed, subject to complying with all applicable regulations.
Second.
We have a motion by Maureen and a second by Matt. Any other discussion? Okay, let's start with Matt.
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Weston?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Great. It's unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.
Yay. Good job.